Hey everyone, I'm Liz Ferry and welcome to another episode of my Crochet Lessons series. In this episode, we'll be going over in detail the process of making a slip stitch. The slip stitch is a similar technique as the chain stitch, another essential crochet stitch. The main difference between a chain and a slip stitch is that to make a chain stitch, you simply pull a loop through the loop on the hook, but with a slip stitch, you need to slip the hook through the fabric first, and then pull a loop through the fabric. This stitch can be used to make a dense fabric, but is mostly used to join other stitches together. First, I'll show you how to make a fabric using slip stitches. Then later in the video, I'll talk about using the slip stitch to join other stitches together, like when working in the round. If you want to see my full video on what you'll need to begin crocheting, check out my crochet materials list video. For the process of making the slip stitch, you'll just need yarn and a crochet hook, but you may also want to use stitch markers to keep track of your stitches. I've started with a slip knot and a crochet chain of 8 chains total for the foundation chain of my work. If you're not sure how to do this, check out my slip knot and crochet chain stitch tutorial. Next, I'm going to chain one more to count as the first stitch of the row. To keep track of the first stitch, you might want to use a stitch marker. I'll mark the stitch by putting a bobby pin around the loop of the chain I just made. The last chain that I made will count as the first slip stitch of the first row, and the chain before that will count as the foundation chain for the first stitch. I'm going to mark that chain too, just to show you where it is, so you can bear in mind where the bottom corner of the work is going to be. The next stitch, which is the third chain from the hook, will count as the foundation chain for the second stitch of the row, which I'm about to make. So to make the second stitch of the row, I'm going to insert my hook into the loop of the third chain from the hook. Next, I'll yarn over the hook, then grab that loop with the hook, and pull it up through the loop of my foundation chain, and up through the loop that's already on my hook. And now you can see the slip stitch that I just made, which is this loop of yarn here. Then I'll do the same thing in the remaining loops of my foundation chain. First, I'll insert my hook through the next loop of my foundation chain, yarn over and grab the loop of yarn using my hook. Then pull that loop up and through the loop that's on my hook, through the loop of the foundation chain. Then again, place the hook through the next loop of the foundation chain, grab a loop with the hook, and pull that loop up through the loop on my hook through the foundation chain. And just keep repeating that until the last chain of the foundation chain. When you reach the end of the row, you could continue to create rows of slip stitches by repeating the process. First, chain 1 to count as the first stitch of the next row. Again, mark that stitch by placing a stitch marker or bobby pin in the loop of the chain. Then turn the work. I'll work the next row of slip stitches into the loops of the slip stitches that I made in the previous row. I'll start the same way I did in the previous row, by inserting my hook into the third loop from the hook, since the first loop counts as the first stitch of this row, and the second loop counts as the foundation of the first stitch. This time though, the first loop is the chain that I made to start the row, the second loop is the last slip stitch that I made in the previous row, and the third loop is the second from the last slip stitch that I made in the previous row. If you like, you could insert your hook through just one side or the other side of the slip stitch loop. I'm going to work into both sides of the loop, so I'll put my hook through underneath both sides of the loop. Then yarn over and pull up a loop through the stitch, and then through the loop on the hook. And then continue to add slip stitches until the end of the row. Eventually, when you get enough practice, you can make slip stitches in one fluid motion. If you like, you can continue to add rows of slip stitches to create a strip of dense fabric. Or you could use slip stitches to join other stitches together. This is useful if you're making a piece in the round. To begin the work in the round, I've started with a slip knot and a foundation chain of just 3. This is so that there isn't a very large hole at the middle of my circle. If you want to create a chain with a bigger hole in the middle, you can always start your work with a larger chain. Now to join this foundation chain into a circle, I'm going to slip stitch into the first chain. So I'll insert my hook through the first chain, yarn over, then grab the loop, and pull that loop up through the first chain and through the loop on my hook. And now I have a tiny circle here, so I can work a row of stitches into the loop of my circle. To learn more about different stitches you can use on your foundation chain, check out my single crochet, half double crochet, and double crochet stitches tutorials. Once I finish adding stitches to my circle, I can join the first stitch to the last stitch using another slip stitch. To do that, I'll insert my hook into the top loops of the first stitch I made on the circle, then I'll slip stitch in that stitch. If you like, you could cut off the yarn to end the work here, or you could add more rows to widen the circle. To learn to do that, check out my increasing and decreasing tutorial. You can still see a little hole at the middle of the circle using this technique, but if you like, you can sew that hole closed using the end of the yarn. If you'd like to see a technique that eliminates the hole in the middle though, check out my magic circle tutorial. You can also use slip stitches in conjunction with the chain stitch to make a more complex style of foundation chain, or unique stitches. Here I make a branching style of foundation chain, using rows of slip stitches and chains. And I can make a picot, which is a sharp point at the end of a stitch. This technique is made with chains and a slip stitch, and is often found in lace and trim patterns. Here I use the picot to make the tip of a leaf. I'll show you more on these techniques in a future video. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, give it a like and share it on social media. And if you'd really like to help out the channel, you can donate to my Patreon. You can get some pretty cool perks through Patreon, like seeing my videos early, access to some of my prototype patterns, and discounts in my Ravelry store, depending on your level of donation. You can find out more about that at patreon.com/fairyrings. You could also subscribe and click the bell icon so that you don't miss the next episode of this series when it comes out. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!